Hey everyone, Happy New Year first of all, best wishes for the new year. It is time to get the content rolling again, with today a timeline on how Cutedog saved and GGG almost killed the league. Let's dive in. December 4th, 2025, the new expansion drops and people are excited. Well, a good number of them, primarily those that want to play the Druid or Were forms. The league mechanic was a wild card. No one knew it would almost break the game, so people weren't particularly excited for that yet. It looked good, but that was about it, I think. I played a lot, and after a week of playing basically full-time, I created a video. In that video, which garnered a bit of attention, called I Feel Dumb Playing PoE 2, I explained the two reasons why I felt dumb playing Path of Exile 2. I will link the video, but in short, it was because the game felt to me like I'm not allowed to experiment or mess around with builds, especially in a league start scenario. And I do play SSF, that is important to mention. But that said, you do lack resources, especially uncut gems during that time, you have to deal with so much friction, and the campaign feels like a slog if you're not on a good build. It can even feel like a slog if you are, I think. And in my case, on top of that, I wasn't really familiar with melee builds. I definitely screwed up in that sense as well, so I did not have that much of a decent build. The second reason for feeling dumb is because with all the decisions GGG makes, it can feel like you're wasting your time, as your efforts and time investment aren't respected. Examples are failing a trial, or getting your whole temple destroyed after killing the architect, or having it make it through the campaign, which takes me easily 16 hours on league start before you get to properly experience the only new content in the patch, which is the temple. This isn't anything new, but I was reminded of this once again on league start, and combined with a bad build led me to making that video. The video itself would age like a fine wine because a few weeks later we all felt dumb playing this game, but I'll get to that. After this, I made a second video highlighting several issues I had with the map sizes and how this league mechanic exacerbated this issue even further by requiring you to complete 6 maps to do the new league mechanic. All in all, it is safe to say I wasn't having a great time, and after about 1.5 weeks I decided to quit the league. I made my Where Winds Meet magnum opus and took a little break. Normally that would have been the end of the story, but GGG fortunately had some other plans. GGG fixed primarily a lot of bugs and made some general changes, but for the narrative of this video, no significant changes were actually made with regards to the temple in patch 0.4.0b on December 15th. It's worth noting that patch 0.4 was probably the buggiest PoE 2 patch GGG has released up to this point. Some content creators speculated this could be because of the pace of developing 2 games at the same time, with a league every 2 months. I personally think it's a little bit too soon to tell, but for me it was definitely noticeable how many bugs the patch had when it released. On the bright side, it was announced in the announcements that performance after 0.4 would be greatly increased, and for me at least, that was absolutely the case. The game runs about twice as well for me, which is a massive win. On December 18th, patch 0.4.0c hits, bringing significant buffs to the temple. The number of rooms destroyed after killing the architect was halved, and after killing Adziri reduced by 25%. Several medallions were added, one to reroll your hand, so reroll the rooms available for placement, another, Xantipes, which added map modifiers to the temple, which was a massive buff as those modifiers also add rarity at the expense of making the temple harder to complete. Room effects were buffed, increasing rewards even further. Unique monsters were added to the temple, increasing rewards even further. The sealed vault was added to the temple, increasing rarity further. I am listing all of these buffs individually to signify across how many different axes GGG buffed the temple. It was sorely needed. The temple didn't only constantly reset your progression, it also wasn't rewarding at all, making it a pretty crappy mechanic. Some might even say you'd be dumb for doing it. But this patch changed everything pretty much, and with all these new modifiers into effect, and simultaneously with several big brain players figuring out how to best build a temple, the new league mechanic changed from not worthwhile to the best way to farm endgame in terms of at least loot, and I would argue also in terms of fun. Temple building turned out to have a lot of depth, and it was great to interact with. The temple at this point, December 22nd, was pretty juicy. I think you could make an argument that the amount of loot dropping was completely fine. However, for some reason, GGG decided to buff the temple even more by applying hotfix 5, which had the magic and rare monsters scale with the level of the temple, resulting in vastly more higher rarity monsters in endgame temples. And those rare monsters had all the rarity modifiers on them, so this was a multiplicative buff to loot. Plus, Adziri's temple now generates at level 81 from level 80 when you are yourself level 90 plus, which most players were at this point. And higher monster levels, that means more loot. But we need to talk about Cutedog, ladies and gentlemen. It's Christmas time, happy Christmas. GGG is on a well-deserved holiday, well, we thought, but the streaming community is in full swing. Cutedog was one of the streamers leading the charge together with his community regarding temple building. And to put that in perspective, the temple, the new league mechanic, was the only new content that patch 0.4 offered. The druid was just a class, not really content in that sense, at least in my opinion. For me, the new temple was the most exciting part of the patch, and Cutedog really went all in on this mechanic and slowly but surely figured out how to construct a lucrative temple. Other streamers did the same thing, really focusing on this aspect of the game, such as Popgun. Seeing and understanding at some point how much depth the league mechanic had made me interested in it as well. I enjoy mechanics like this, mechanics like Betrayal, mechanics where there is a setup and then a big payoff after putting in a lot of effort. And it became clear how the medallions should be applied. It also became clear you could lock chains, and if you spent enough time setting up the temple, you would be rewarded with a very lucrative endgame system. The most lucrative Path of Exile 2 has ever seen, and likely will see for a long time. Cutedog, Popgun, and those communities with their efforts made me return to the league, log back into my Necromancer. I even restarted my SSF league to upgrade my guide on the Infernalist minion summoner over at Mobilytics, and I started constructing a temple as well. And I had an absolute blast. After Christmas, it became clear to me that the temple is a truly genius design, and it is something you can only really appreciate after spending a few days doing non-stop temple building. If you put 40 to 50 hours into this thing, I think it becomes quite clear. Given how Jonathan approaches game design, despite making some choices every now and then that aren't appreciated by the community, I think it is hard to deny that the guy is a genius. He has co-developed a genius game with Path of Exile 1, and I think the temple design, including the emerging or evolving gameplay that comes out of it, are intentional. This isn't a coincidence, it is way too elaborate and intricate for that. The temple is designed in such a way that we have access to all of the building blocks, and it is up to us to use those building blocks and make the most efficient and fun building, i.e. the temple. That is not easy to do from a design perspective, I would like to point out. Provide too few building blocks and the whole thing is solved in a day, and it is likely boring to play with after just a few days. Provide too many or too complicated building blocks and the whole thing gets so convoluted that all intuition is out the window and only the gigabrains can use it. The temple found a nice balance, I think. Basically anyone could build a temple, a random temple, with one or two chains. A vibe temple, if you will, just plot down blocks and only take a few basic rules into account. The most important one, never loop your chains. I did that, but also for the juicers and gigabrains out there, you could go ham and construct an amazing, well-optimized temple that would provide massive rewards thanks to stacking rarity and quantity buffs. The temple has this sweet spot, which I think is a hallmark of good game design. Path of Exile in general has a lot of these easy to learn, hard to master mechanics, where easy to learn should be seen in the context of Path of Exile, right, which is quite difficult by default, but I think you get my point. Delve and Heist are easy to engage with, easy to learn in a way. Betrayal is even easy to learn, but to master the mechanic takes a lot of skill. While the temple setup was tiresome at league start, very punishing, hard to get into, and we still needed 6 crystals from 6 maps, it was also true that once you have taken that initial hurdle, once you made it past the friction and pain points, you reached the point of no return. It's like getting to maps in Path of Exile 1. At that point, you are hooked, or as Chris once said, they have your soul. Here, I think it's the same thing. Once you have a somewhat decent grasp on the rooms, how they're connected, what their function is, how the medallions should be applied, and ultimately how to build multiple chains or snakes, that is when you enter an almost limitless endgame system, which you can endlessly optimize, which has tons of rewards. And a mechanic that is true to GGG's philosophy, a mechanic that rewards game knowledge. Game knowledge because you had to build your own temple. This isn't like Harvest or Necropolis, which are deterministic and have one perfect layout. No, there's way too much variance in which rooms you're getting, plus the architect room is randomly placed. You can't just copy someone's temple, that is not how this works. Everyone has to build their own version of the temple, and I think that is a great example where the correct amount of RNG leads to just the right amount of variance, so that temple building remains interesting. The better you got at the temple, the more rewards you would receive as you are stacking the right rooms. The bigger your temple was, the more time you would spend inside of the temple, increasing your investment into the mechanic in terms of playtime and, let's say, emotional engagement. The temple becomes your proud creation, growing every day. There is a certain beauty in that. It demands commitment from the players, which is then rewarded later, not unlike some things in real life. It should be clear at this point in the video, and it was very clear on December 30th, that these temples were shitting out divines and tier 1 and tier 0 uniques. You just had to watch this stream for a little bit, and streamers were running not even fully built out temples and get 50 divines per run. This was, of course, a lot of fun, it had a big impact on the economy, but I see it mostly as players reaping the rewards of weeks of work. Because make no mistake, it took a long time to build a temple like this. This was in no way easy or free loot. It was undeniable, however, that maybe these temples were a little overtuned at this point. Cascading buffs to the temple resulted in massive loot, and running the temple versus any other content in the game was night and day. I don't think that is a bad thing for a new league mechanic in an early access game, but still, you want players to test out your new content after all, right? If we're all mapping, which was already balanced previously, plus it's not going to exist in patch 0.5 at least in some capacity, then what is the point? The developers wouldn't learn anything new. Somehow, however, in a baffling choice on GGG's end, they decided to buff the temples even more. 6 mod tier 15 maps granted now 2 crystals, meaning you only needed to run 3 maps to do the temple again. This was amazing, of course, and still sorely needed in my opinion. This isn't the baffling choice I mean. No, I mean this, and I quote, "Temple monster effectiveness now scales with temple level, just like how monsters in maps do. This results in 40% higher drops and monster life at temple level 80. End quote. This is just a casual, multiplicative 40% buff to the temple. It's just what we needed, really. Say what you want, but GGG being accused of being out of touch goes both ways. Just as we complain about nerfs that we can't explain, this was a buff that no one could explain. Before we get into the nerfs, let me share my own experience with this newly buffed temple. On January 2nd, in a 12-hour playing session, I dropped a mirror and 3 headhunters. In a temple that wasn't even good compared to a fully built out temple. I had like 40 rooms and these were the modifiers, I screenshotted it. It earned me a quick call with the Cutedog himself, who afterwards kept using my shabby temple to indicate that even with a temple as bad as mine, you would be able to get a mirror. In SSF no less, where a mirror is pretty much completely useless. It's time for a small interlude. Knowing how the temple works and getting addicted to it had a few interesting side effects. As a result, because you spent so much time in the temple, the time you spent in maps to get the crystals was relatively a lot less. Even if you didn't do the Holton thing, which I couldn't in SSF, just mapping in tier 1 maps in my case was a nice break from the super difficult and juicy temples that I had built. And at this point in time, the Holton thing was disabled by GGG, and also at this point in time I was actually running tier 15 maps after the buffs. Mapping changed from being a total grind for crystals to a nice side activity, which gave me some respite before I had to focus again on the temple monsters, which were super hard to kill. In SSF, I don't have access to builds that you see in trade, of course, so I had to make do with my summoner. It's a fine build, but it does 20 times less damage, I think, compared to what you see in some of these streams. Which is all fine with me, by the way. I sometimes rolled temple mods, however, that made me take 2 hours to clear the whole damn thing. Another interesting thing that rose in popularity was light radius. I did have a guy in my video comments, just one guy by the way, saying that I should get light radius, and I was like, you're out of your mind. Why would I give up affixes for that? It turns out that guy was actually right, light radius was amazing. I think it is a remnant from Diablo 2 actually, light radius, but it increases what you can see on the minimap and overlay map, and you could stack up on light radius. For me, it became a fun little side project, especially after the buffs to the crystals. As I mentioned, tier 15 maps would now give 2 crystals instead of 1, which meant you only had to do 3 maps for 6 crystals. Equip a bunch of light radius and you could see the temple icon on your map from miles away, making it very useful to have. I ended up crafting a few pieces to have about 100% increased light radius while still being res capped, and I equipped 35% movement speed boost as well, so I could efficiently run those maps and find the crystals. As the temple was so juicy, I constantly dropped the Grand Design tablet, allowing you to run a tower, and then all maps in the area were freely accessible. This way I didn't have to kill the map boss, I could purely focus on finding the crystals. It was great. Using all of these in-game mechanics to optimize for running the temple and finding crystals, I felt were some amazing side effects of my temple addiction. I would never run light radius gear otherwise, and I think it is cool that despite a fairly early stage of development, all things considered, Path of Exile 2 already has this many mechanics in depth that using several strategies you can optimize your gameplay like I did. Imagine having an actual fun and decent endgame mapping system like we will hopefully get in 0.5. The way that could interact with out-of-map league mechanics like the temple, you would actually have to choose what would be more fun, you know, like in Path of Exile 1. Isn't it interesting how that goes? So everyone who is still playing at this point celebrated New Year, but you know, who am I kidding, we were all playing PoE 2 and building those temples, and we were all having an amazing time because this thing was absolutely cracked. I can sympathize with the trade economy, but if you for a minute decouple the effects on the economy from the temple itself, it's very hard to deny the temple itself was a joy to play. Addictive like crack as well, and if you want to decouple the game from the economy, there is a great game mode that I can recommend, by the way. It saves you half the drama every league. This time, however, it didn't save me. GGG, in their infinite wisdom, on a Saturday no less, released a hotfix that did effectively 2 things. 1, it hugely nerfed the rewards the temple would provide, and 2, it made it impossible to create chains anymore because you couldn't lock the end of a chain, which meant you couldn't build a temple like everyone had been doing for the last 2 to 3 weeks. The first nerf was deserved. Most people and streamers would agree to that. I think getting 3 headhunters and a mirror in SSF in 12 hours should not be the norm. We can probably all agree on that, right? Apparently, the number of monsters in the temple also fried the servers. It was truly insane. Don't expect to see this again anytime soon. But I do really hope that you were part of this experience because it is a rather unique one and it was super fun. Point 2, however, is baffling. The whole focus is point 2 here. Loot nerfs were deserved, no question about it. This is all about point 2, preventing players from locking the end of their chains killed players' abilities to build a proper temple. The fallout of this was that everyone quickly realized that all the work that they put into creating the temple over the last few weeks in my case around 40 to 50 hours, was wasted, because unless you had a fully completed temple, which very few people had, you couldn't sustain your current layout and definitely couldn't expand your current layout. The variance again would be too large, and you would see your temple crumble before your eyes after every run, and there wasn't anything you could do about it. It was disheartening and it caused an outrage. Again, everyone who invested a few days into the temple immediately realized how bad of a patch this was. The timing was horrible too, basically a month into the league. Why mess with temple building 1 month into the league? And also, what happened to the no mid-league nerfs policy? Again, I'm talking about the locking of change, right? I'm not talking about the loot that fried the servers. But worse are the optics. And if you think about it, there are two options here. GGG either didn't want us to build temples with chains, which seems ridiculous. It's like releasing a patch which prevents players from putting Gravicious into transportation back when he still had good rewards. Why not allow players to create and sustain temples after putting in so many hours? Chains shouldn't even cause server issues. A room is a room. It has the same number of enemies in it. It doesn't matter if it is chained or not from a server perspective. And a few days later that turned out to be true indeed. The servers had nothing to do with this. But option 2 isn't much better, because that option is that GGG didn't understand the impact of the nerf, which is also insane to me, as everyone else who played the temple immediately understood the temple system was done for. Did no one at GGG actually consider this or had any insights into what releasing this patch meant? That everyone's efforts would be wasted by a simple line in the patch notes? Whichever of the two options you pick, they're both pretty bad. They're either basically blocking us from having fun, or they're clueless about their own patches, which feeds into the narrative that GGG doesn't play their own game, option 2, or doesn't want us to have fun, option 1. And it's a bad look, to be honest. I have no clue why they decided on this. They even doubled down with hotfix 14 a day later. At this point, these patch notes had more than 3 times the number of replies in the forums than the original 0.4 patch notes. This wasn't a vocal minority. Everyone was pissed, myself included, and rightfully so. It is unprecedented, I think, in Path of Exile 2, and hopefully we won't see it anytime soon. Fortunately, this wasn't the end of the story. On January 5th, 2 days after the community lost their collective minds, and for good reason, hotfix 15 reverted the medallion changes. Players could after 2 days finally lock their temple chains again and could finally play the endgame again. For all the criticism and baffling decisions they sometimes make, GGG ultimately listens to the player base. I think in this case they couldn't ignore the feedback even if they wanted to, but still, credit where credit is due, they did make the right decision in the end. It never had to come to this, of course, but hey, hopefully they learned from this costly mistake, because it's a bit of a dent into players' confidence, and GGG will make more unpopular decisions in the future, we can count on that, so causing such a shitstorm as a result of a mistake that anyone involved in temple building could have seen coming, that is a little tough to see. This is not the kind of stuff that you want to waste your goodwill of the community on. Either way, I wanted to end on a positive note, because the temple is what brought me back to playing the game. I think it is and remains a genius system. I think the temple and all the immersion gameplay around it stopped the bleeding in terms of retention, because that trend wasn't looking all that solid. And all in all, I think the temple is the most fun and interesting endgame PoE 2 currently has to offer. Fast layout, classing, mapping, at least from my perspective. And I also feel it is currently, in terms of balance, in a very good state. The monsters aren't ridiculously tanky anymore, rewards aren't completely crazy unless you have a fully built out temple, which I think is totally fair, because a fully built temple is super hard to get. I think it is much more comparable to running Abyss maps, for example, so ultimately, after the dust has settled and the community did GGG a favor by limit testing the temple and providing feedback, we as a collective ended up with another super interesting and fun endgame mechanic that we will likely enjoy for years to come. Because that's the bottom line, isn't it? No matter how we got here, to some extent at least, we're here now, it is all good, balanced, fun, and those still playing are having a blast once more. A small message to GGG, please stop touching the bloody temple, reserve any more buffs or nerfs for next league, comply to your own no mid-league nerfs policy, and have fun developing a banger PoE1 league. I enjoyed the Thyworm stuff quite a lot actually, and I'm looking forward to another league. I'm curious about PoE 2 0.5 as well. This new endgame is likely to cause some more uproars, but we will cross that bridge once we get there. I ultimately had a great time in the league, and after a rough start I won't be playing much more of it, but not because I'm not having fun, just because I feel I'm out of content for this and I want to make some more videos, so I'm going to tackle a few other projects. I hope you enjoyed this little chronicle of patch 0.4. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. See you soon, love you all, bye bye.